Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really serious situation that's, well, unfolded very quickly. We're talking about the sharp rise in tensions between India and Pakistan, specifically as things stand today, May 7th, 2025. We're going to try and unpack the sequence of events, what led up to this, starting with that recent terrorist attack, and look at the immediate fallout based on what we know.
Yeah, it's quite striking actually how fast things have moved. You have this terrible attack, and almost immediately it spirals into a major bilateral crisis.
A huge crisis, not just diplomacy collapsing, but significant military actions, too.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe let's rewind just a bit. Back to April 22nd. That attack in Pahalgam in the Baisaran Valley, Jammu and Kashmir.
A horrific event. 26 civilians killed, mostly Hindu tourists, and others injured too.
And a group called the Resistance Front claimed responsibility. They're linked to Lashkar-Taiba, right?
That's the reported link, yes. Now, the initial reactions were, well, quite predictable, but also set the stage for everything that followed. Well, Pakistan immediately condemned the attack, publicly, and strongly denied any state involvement.
But India saw it differently.
Very differently, India quickly alleged Pakistani support for the group, laying the blame, essentially, at Pakistan's door. That fundamental disagreement right there, that's the starting point for the diplomatic breakdown.
And that breakdown was fast. India took some pretty drastic steps, didn't they?
Extremely drastic, expelling Pakistani diplomats, recalling their own from Islamabad. They suspended all visa services for Pakistanis, closed the land borders.
And then there was the Indus Waters Treaty withdrawal. That feels huge.
Oh, it is huge. That treaty is from 1960. It governs how the Indus River system waters are shared, which is, absolutely critical for both countries. Pulling out of that, even if temporary, signals a massive shift.
Wow. And Pakistan's response?
Reciprocal, largely. They doubled down on denying involvement in the attack. They announced they were suspending the shipload agreement.
The 1972 agreement
Yeah.
focused on peaceful resolution.
That's the one. Plus, they closed their borders, their airspace to India, and slapped on trade restrictions. So within days, you essentially had a complete severing of normal ties.
Okay, so diplomacy collapses. Then things start getting kinetic, as they say.
Right. After the Pahalgam attack, Indian forces launched what they called a joint cordon and search operation in the area.
Locking down Pahalgam, bringing in helicopters,
Yeah.
looking for the attackers who apparently fled into the mountains.
Exactly. A cordon and search basically means sealing off an area and then sweeping through it. Standard counterinsurgency tactic, but a large-scale one here. There were also reports, quite concerning ones, about the demolition of family homes of individuals suspected of involvement.
And direct clashes started happening too.
Yes, sadly. We saw reports of a gunfight in Basantgar. An Indian soldier was killed, along with the senior Lashkar-e-Taiba commander, supposedly Altaf Lali. Two other soldiers wounded there as well.
And the border itself, the line of control, started heating up.
Definitely. Around April 24th, the Indian Army reported they stopped an infiltration attempt near Uri. They claimed 2 insurgents were killed, weapons recovered.
So even before these big strikes we saw today, the lawsuit was already becoming active again.
Very active. By April 24th, 25th, reports were coming in of skirmishes, gunfire exchanges at multiple points along the Lost Sea. It wasn't just one spot. Tensions were high all along the line.
Okay, which brings us to today, May 7th, and this major escalation. Operation Sindoor.
That's right, Indian air and missile strikes. And importantly, these weren't just confined to the disputed Kashmir region. They went into Pakistan proper.
India stated the targets were terrorist infrastructure, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Yes, they listed 9 locations. Places like Bahawalpur, Muridke, Tarakalan, Sialkot, Bimber, Kotli, Muzaffarabad. They describe these as terror camps, command centers, hideouts, even headquarters.
And Pakistan's reaction.
Immediate condemnation, called it unjustified aggression. And they made a pretty bold claim that their Air Force shot down 5 Indian warplanes.
5. Has India confirmed that?
No, India hasn't confirmed that claim at all. Pakistan also said its Air Force was scrambled and prevented further airspace violations. Meanwhile, you had reports coming from the ground in Pakistan of explosions near Ahmedpur Sharqiya and in Muzaffarabad.
These claims about downed aircraft seem really murky.
Extremely murky.
Right.
Pakistan also initially mentioned shooting down one of their own JF-17s that had supposedly strayed into Indian airspace, along with the 5 Indian ones. Then you have unconfirmed reports saying maybe 2 planes went down, one in India, one Indian administered Kashmir.
And I saw something about independent researchers looking at debris photos.
Right. Some analysts looked at photos from a crash site in Indian administered Kashmir and identified what looked like an external fuel tank. possibly from a Rafale or a Mirage jet, both French-made aircraft used by India. But again, it's analysis of photos, not official confirmation.
So India's version of Operation Sindoor is quite different.
Starkly different. They described it as very precise. A 23-minute operation, Rafale jets using Escalation long-range missiles and ASM hammer precision bombs.
And they're stressing it was only aimed at those 9 specific terror locations. In Pakistani-administered Kashmir and Pakistan's Punjab province.
Exactly, crossing both the line of control and the international border. The official Indian line is focused, measured, and non-escalatory. They insist they deliberately avoided hitting any Pakistani military sites.
There was also that claim from Jaish-e-Mohammed about the Bahawalpur strike.
Yes, a significant claim. They alleged the strike killed 10 family members of their leader, Masood Azhar, including 5 children plus 4 close associates. If that's true, it's a major blow to their leadership circle.
But then you have a Pakistani general saying Indian jets didn't enter their airspace. How does that square?
It's confusing, isn't it? He did acknowledge explosions and a power blackout in Muzaffarabad, though. So the impact was felt likely from standoff weapons like missiles launched from within or near Indian airspace, if his statement is accurate. It just adds another layer of, well, conflicting information.
And the public messaging has been very forceful on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. The Indian Army's social media posted justice is served with the hashtag pahalgam terror attack hashtag. They also reported Pakistani firing into the Bimber Gali sector.
And Pakistan. There's some confusion about captured soldiers.
Yes, Pakistan's defense minister initially claimed they'd captured Indian soldiers and shot down planes. The claim about captured soldiers was later retracted, but they've consistently maintained that India hit civilian areas. They mentioned children being killed, damage to the Bilal Mosque in Muzaffarabad.
I saw a BBC report mentioning an educational complex hit in Muridke, too.
That's right, a complex with a school, college, medical clinic. Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, called the strikes cowardly attacks on civilians and warned about retaliation.
Meanwhile, India Prime Minister Modi canceled his Europe trip. They're framing this purely as a necessary counterterrorism operation, linked directly to pahalgam.
That's the justification provided, yes. A necessary response to terrorism originating from Pakistan, with pahalgam cited as the immediate trigger.
Okay, let's look at the wider world. How is the international community reacting?
Well, the UN has called for maximum restraint, urging dialogue, diplomacy, de-escalation. Pretty standard, but important nonetheless.
Iran offered to mediate.
Yes, they did. An interesting offer, given the regional dynamics. Whether either side will take them up on it, especially now, remains to be seen.
And travel advisories.
Right. After the initial pahalgam attack, Russia and the UK both updated their advisories, warning citizens about increased risks in Pakistan.
China.
China urged de-escalation, called for calm. Bangladesh and the UAE specifically came out in support of peace talks.
And the U.S.
The U.S. also urged de-escalation. Interestingly, the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee made a point of condemning the New York Times for calling the pahalgam attackers militants, insisting it was terrorism.
Even former President Trump weighed in.
Briefly, yes, expressed hope for a quick end to the tensions. After Operation Sindoor happened, the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, stated the U.S. is monitoring closely and reiterated the call to avoid further escalation.
So let's talk about the immediate aftermath, the human cost of these latest strikes. What are the reported casualty figures?
They are grim and again contested. Pakistani security sources say the Indian missile strikes killed 26 people, including at least 2 children, and injured 35. They also report another 5 civilians killed by Indian artillery fire within Pakistan. So their total is 31 civilians killed.
And India is reporting casualties on its side as well.
Yes, Indian officials report 15 civilians killed and 43 injured in Indian-administered Kashmir due to Pakistani artillery shelling. And tragically, there was that separate incident of a farmer killed in India's Bathinda district when an unidentified aircraft crashed. Unclear if that crash is directly linked, but the timing is notable.
Beyond the casualties, what about disruptions? Airspace closures?
Major disruptions. Pakistan closed its airspace entirely for 48 hours. That meant canceled flights, chaos at airports like Karachi and Lahore.
And schools closed too.
Yes, in Pakistan's Punjab province, schools and colleges were shut, exams postponed, daily life significantly impacted.
And international flights.
Big impact there too. Indian carriers like SpiceJet, Indigo, Air India halted flights in the region. International airlines like Air France, Lufthansa started rerouting to avoid Pakistani airspace altogether. Lots of delays and diversions for global travel.
Even that border ceremony at Wagah was affected.
Yes, the Atari Walga ceremony. Usually very elaborate. It was significantly scaled back, and they suspended the symbolic handshake between the soldiers, a very visible sign of the tension.
And you mentioned visas being suspended earlier. That must be hitting families hard.
Absolutely. Families that span the border are suddenly cut off. It's a very real, personal consequence of this diplomatic freeze.
Going back to the military claims, this information war seems intense. Pakistan claiming 5 jets, drones, even an Israeli made Heron UAV.
Right. Those are the claims from the PM's office. And you had that CNN report citing a French intelligence source, supposedly confirming one Indian rival downed.
But in-green media pushes back hard on that, calling claims of a downed MiG-29 misinformation.
Exactly. And then to add yet another layer, MSN reported some local Indian government sources claiming 3 fighter jets had crashed inside India. The circumstances there are completely unclear whether it was accidents related to the operation or something else.
So Indian officials are actively calling out what they see as a Pakistani misinformation campaign, false claims about hitting air bases, headquarters.
Yes, they're pointing to specific claims circulating online targeting Srinagar Air Base, destroying an Indian Brigade HQ, the multiple downed jets, and labeling them as false propaganda, likely from pro-Pakistani sources.
It really underscores how difficult it is to know what's actually happening, doesn't it?
It truly does. Verifying information in real time during a conflict like this, with such high stakes and, frankly, so much nationalistic fervor on both sides,
Yeah.
it's incredibly challenging. Both governments are shaping narratives. Independent confirmation is scarce.
Okay, so summing up this deep dive for today, we've seen an incredibly rapid escalation from that horrific pahalgam attack,
To a near total diplomatic breakdown, border skirmishes flaring up.
culminating in these major air and missile strikes today, Operation Sindoor, deep inside Pakistan.
And crucially, these completely diverging stories from India and Pakistan about what happened in those strikes.
Yeah.
Who was targeted, what was hit, were planes shot down, just fundamentally different accounts.
It really highlights the deep mistrust, doesn't it? The animosity that just persists.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of how volatile the situation remains.
So it's a deeply worrying situation, very fluid, many questions still unanswered. As we wrap up, I guess the big question hanging over all this is what happens next? What are the long term consequences going to be for regional stability, for the Kashmir conflict itself?
And maybe just as importantly, how does anyone navigate this fog of information? How do you find the ground truth when the narratives are so fiercely contested? That challenge itself is a major part of this ongoing crisis.